So Mortal Kombat's always been in kind of a weird space for me. Like, I love the look of it, the whole style of it, and the character design and all that, but my big problem is that I just don't really play fighting games that much. Aside from Super Smash Bros, which most people don't even count as a real fighting game, I've just never really been any good at them. So my question is this: can you still enjoy Mortal Kombat 11 even if you don't really play fighting games? This isn't really going to be a review, it's more like impressions from a newbie's perspective, because let me tell you, I am horrendous when it comes to fighting games. First things first, since this is the 11th entry in the series, do I really need to know anything about the story? Well, as I've said, I've not really played the other stories, and there's definitely moments where I don't quite know who this person is or what their backstory is, but then again, you don't really need to know. Although the game definitely could do with a kind of recapping the story so far cutscene that you can go into. According to the wiki page, the game picks up where MKX left off, with the big baddie Shinnok being killed by the guy called Raiden. He's the one with all the lightning and electricity powers. He's basically the god of thunder. This all pisses off this girl called Kronika, who's like a super high tier god, like higher than all the others, and she decides that Raiden needs to be completely erased from time because he's messed around with time too much and changed the past too many times. She brings back past versions of old characters, some who are no longer alive because they died in previous games, and some who are now evil versions called Revenants when they died and then came back as like a corrupted, weird, evil version. For a long-standing series fan, I'm sure all of this stuff will be like massive fan service for everyone, but as a newbie, most of it's lost on me. Like, I can acknowledge when cool stuff happens, but ultimately I don't get that whole nostalgia that really has to carry you through. But despite not knowing any of the proper history or feeling that sort of nostalgia, I did really enjoy the story from what I've played so far. It's really comic booky, it's really like wacky, and it doesn't take itself too seriously at all. You're there for a good time, and it knows it. You'll watch a cool fight in a cutscene, and then you'll jump in, do the fight yourself, and probably won't look half as cool doing it if you're me playing, and then you go back into the cutscene, which is where you'll get all your story. You can totally tell that it's made by the folks who made Injustice, and that's a fighting game series that I do actually really like because I'm super into superheroes. The characters and story have a whole lot of charm, and the characters for the most part are pretty well acted. I mean, there's some corny lines of dialogue, particularly coming from Sonya Blade, who's voiced this time by real life, MMA, UFC fighter Ronda Rousey, and of course she's not actually an actress, so she would struggle with that, but she does fine, it's just some of it's a bit hokey. Since it's a fighting game and there's not like an adventure-y, out-in-the-world kind of gameplay loop, all the story is told through the cutscenes, but these are really well put together, like the visuals are amazing. All the facial capture and motion capture is truly like top-level AAA stuff that you would expect from a game of this kind of budget. Obviously, since it is a fighting game, the fight choreography in these cutscenes is absolutely stellar. It's like kind of a cross between The Raid, The Matrix, and a superhero movie like The Avengers. It's all proper martial arts techniques, and then flashy kind of magic-y stuff going on as well, and just earth-shattering punches every 10 seconds. In terms of gameplay, the 4 face buttons all control a different limb. So you've got your front arm, your back arm, your front leg, and your back leg. This makes comboing feel really, really smooth, and the moves flow together naturally with the character's movements. There are several simple 3 to 4 button combos with each character that will carry any newbie, like me, through the default difficulty on the story mode, and then if you want to get a little more adventurous, you can start putting in the different directional inputs and stuff, and the combos do vary a lot, from some very easy inputs to some really complicated ones. That being said, setting it to the medium difficulty with little to no fighting game experience is still pretty challenging, and your opponent will tear you apart if you just sat there spamming. I had a real hard time with my first few fights against the character called Cabal, who can kind of teleport and send this like tornado thing at you where you're stuck in a spin, and then he just grabbed me with these hook weapon things he's got and just keeps slamming me. But then when, like me, you're inevitably not doing very well, during the last section of your health bar you'll unlock the ability to launch a fatal blow. These are special moves which do loads of damage and trigger a super violent cutscene. You can only use these once per match, so you've got to be very wary when you do choose to use it, which does add an extra level of tactics to the gameplay. Let's be honest now, the main reason you're probably going to be playing Mortal Kombat is for the Fatalities. These are super over-the-top, ultra-violent finisher moves that aren't so much about damaging the opponent's health bar as it is about damaging their ego. These aren't meant to be realistic at all, they're meant to be just crazy, violent, stylish nonsense, essentially. There's one where Scorpion dives towards his opponent and he basically burns burns away their entire waist and they're just standing there with a spine between legs and just a pair of shoulders. The combat in Mortal Kombat is easily the game's biggest strength. Moment to moment, you can go from unleashing a flurry of expertly executed combos and special moves with meter burn buffs and everything, to having your character's head turned into a tappable reservoir of blood and brains. It's a system that is undeniably fun when you're winning, but crushingly frustrating when you're outclassed. But if you are having too much of a hard time, there are 5 different difficulty modes to choose from, so you can tailor that to your experience. But I really wouldn't recommend if you're on easy to then jump straight into playing online, because that's a whole different ballgame. My favourite thing about Injustice 2 was the really deep level of customization you had over your characters. They gave you the ability to customize pretty much everything about your character's costume while still being really clearly definable. No matter what you did, your Batman still looked like Batman, but he was your Batman. The customization here unfortunately isn't quite as deep, but still pretty good. Each character has 3 unique accessories which can be swapped out for others. For example, you've got Scorpion's iconic mask, swords, and kunai, which is that chain daggery thing, and he's got about 30 different variants for each one. Other than that, you can change the colors and overall style of the outfits, but not much else in terms of visuals. And it's not like you can pinpoint which part is which color, it's more like a shader overall, and then when you change the style of the outfit, it's more like whether he wears a shirt or not, or whether he's got a hood up, or whether he's got bits and pieces of armor. You can change your character's intros and outros as well as their taunts and some abilities if you do want to add that personal touch. I can't really speak to the online gameplay because like hell am I going anywhere near that shit. But the story has plenty of fights for you if you want a more deliberately crafted experience, you know, with like one solid narrative through line for why you're doing these battles. The characters all feel really unique and like they do have a real history with each other, even if I don't know it. My personal favourite so far has to be Liu Kang. Soon as I felt him use this move where he repeatedly kicks you in midair, basically running on your face, I knew this was my guy. Everyone's already said it, but the biggest problem with this game is obviously the progression system. It's super grindy and completely random, so you can't even grind for what you actually want. Like say you really fancy those sweet new shades for Johnny Cage, looks like you're stuck in the crypt for a long time. While Injustice 2 did have loot boxes, which sucked. That game was super rewarding when it came to giving you new cosmetic items after every single fight, so you'd end up with loads of new stuff after just a few matches. The developers NetherRealm have tweaked this and made the Towers of Time easier, but the grind is still very much there, and it's designed to keep you playing for as long as possible. And the thing is, with fighting games, their campaigns are normally pretty short, so this really feels egregious and like it's trying to artificially lengthen it for the sake of it. It's just padding. So if you're like me and not really into fighting games, but do like the look of Mortal Kombat as a series, you should definitely consider giving this one a chance. Maybe not at full price, especially given how grindy it is currently, but after a fair discount, I'd totally go for it. It's really well tutorialized, so it teaches you the basics pretty slowly and nice and simply. But if you want to hop online, you're really going to need to practice to get those combos down. My favorite thing about fighting games when I do play them is all the different characters you have. There's always someone for you, and there's so many different variations. There'll be people who favor like certain weapons, people who are faster and slower, and they all feel really different and unique here. Everyone feels good to play in one way or another, but the standouts for me, as I said, were Liu Kang, Jax, and Sub-Zero. And I said it in our podcast this week, but I maintain Sub-Zero is way cooler than Scorpion. Now, I'm not saying Scorpion isn't cool. He's got such weird demon-y powers and he can like teleport stuff. That's awesome. But Sub-Zero, he can make like ice axes and stuff. I'm a sucker for a guy with a big old axe, to be honest. But anyway, that's just some of my impressions from a noob's perspective on Mortal Kombat 11. Like I said, this isn't like a real review because I wouldn't really know what to say. Like I don't know enough about what makes a good fighting game in terms of the genre. But I thought I'd come out here and kind of say how I feel as a non-fighting game fan, I suppose. And that's why I've tried to keep it a little less stilted in terms of structure, because my other reviews are very written out and I know exactly what I'm saying. But here, because I don't know what I want to say, because I don't know what makes a fighting game good for a lot of people, I thought I'd come in from my personal standing. I might put out a full review later on, but I'm not sure yet because I still need to finish the story and play it with all the characters a bit more. As always, if you like the content we've been creating and want to help us make it, hop on over to patreon.com/prettygoodsgaming. You'll get early access to our podcast, as well as the Discord channel, as well as a few other different things. It genuinely really does help us out so much, and we couldn't do it without any of you guys. We'll be back tomorrow with our news roundup. I've been Henry, this has been Pretty Good Gaming. We'll catch you next time. Bye for now.